Can it be? Dave Smith learned the error of his ways, realizing how terrible of a person Donald Trump is. It's I'm gonna try a new approach. I have a podcast episode coming out Thursday. I had a very good conversation with my guest, and although it ate at me, I was very, very irritated, very disappointed on how many people were lying and blindly believing Donald Trump and everything that he's doing in his current administration. We've all said this is stuff he's going to do. Now that he's doing it, people are now going like, wait, I didn't vote for this. And then we told you this was what he was going to do. All those promises and all those lies you heard about, yeah, that's not going to happen. So I'm going to try to take a new approach. I'm going to try to meet people in the middle to an extent. I still think Donald Trump and his administration's evil, but I want to reach out to the voter, the MAGA supporters. Obviously, content creators and personalities who study politics and give out improper information, they're equally as bad as the Donald Trump administration. But I need to be willing to open my arms. And just like everybody else who's going to watch this video, you have to as well. Because this is not a game. This is America, the strongest, most powerful, most important country in the world. And if we don't do something about the terribleness that is the Trump administration, the terribleness that happens in general, then nothing's going to get better. I can say I told you so as much as I want against Dave Smith, but that won't mean anything. Like, what do I gain from that? Let's just move on. Hopefully we can do some good things. All right, I took so many time. Let's dive into the video. Let's see what he says.
We're going to be talking about the fallout here from the U.S. Involvement in the war between Israel and Iran. But most importantly, we want to get to the actual goal here of the Israeli military campaign. Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu really giving the game away yesterday in an interview with Fox News, where he calls for regime change with Iran. Let's take a listen.
So is regime change part of the effort here?
Could certainly be the result, because the Iran regime is very weak. I think it's basically left with two things. It's plans to have atomic bombs and ballistic missiles. That's basically what Iran has. They certainly don't have the people. 80% of the people would throw these theological thugs out. I mean, they murder them. They oppress them for 46 years. They've yearned for freedom. I mean, they shoot women because their hair is uncovered. They shoot students. They just suck the oxygen from this brave and gifted people, the Iranian people.
I want to talk about the nuclear threat, and I want to talk about President Trump. You just said...
Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to be very clear on the statement. A few things can be true in this instant. One thing can be true. Not wanting to engage in a large-scale conflict. 100% can be true. 100% can be worth discussing. Another thing that I feel like we all should always remember as we dive into these conversations is that you can be upset at Israel for engaging in this conflict. You can be upset at Israel, how they handled everything after the ceasefire with Palestine. Iran is not our friend. Let's not pretend that Iran is now the good guys. Iran is not our friend. Just because we hate Trump, just because some of y'all hate Israel, Iran is not your friend. All right, let's continue.
Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. They want to kill him. Look, he's enemy number one. He's a decisive leader. He never took the path that others took to try to bargain with him in a way that is weak, giving them basically a pathway.
All right, crazy glaze from Donald Trump. Interesting. They're trying to make a claim that all the assassination attempts on Trump was because of Iran. That is a bold claim right there. That is a bold claim. and something that will definitely pique the interest of Donald Trump. I'm not gonna lie.
To enrich uranium, which means a pathway to the bomb, padding it with billions and billions of dollars. He took up this fake agreement and basically tore it up. He killed Qasem Soleimani. He said, made it very clear, including now, you cannot have a nuclear weapon, which means you cannot enrich. He's been very forceful. So for them, he's enemy number one.
Yeah.
Look, they also tried to kill me, but I'm his junior partner.
When did
they
you
understand that President Trump is a great threat to Iran's plans to weaponize nuclear weapons and use them.
When did you
Some of these political leaders are being very good in stroking Donald Trump's ego. I genuinely believe that a lot of these people dealing with Donald Trump, they just got to play into his ego. I think they're all smarter than him. They are way better negotiators, way better leaders, and way better strategists. I was told that Donald Trump would be firm, he would be a superior leader, that we lost all our respect as America because of Joe Biden. Well, I feel like this is what lack of disrespect really looks like right now. I think that's what it really looks like.
tell President Trump you were going to launch these strikes?
Look, I've been in constant contact with President Trump. We've known each other for many years. And obviously, we informed our American friends and President Trump, our great friend, ahead of time. We did. He knew about it, of course.
I mean, there were reports that President Trump kind of helped you achieve your strategic surprise by publicly urging you not to attack when he already knew you had decided to do it. So you were closely coordinating with the U.S. throughout this process.
Look, we're fully coordinated, but understand that America, under President Trump, will make the decisions that are best for America. And that's the way it is. He understands that I, as the Prime Minister of Israel.
So basically, he tried to play some sneaky word games. He did some things that Donald Trump didn't know about at all, but he's trying to phrase it to make it seem like Donald Trump did know about it. Or, and this is why you don't answer questions fully, or Donald Trump did know about it, but he doesn't want it to seem like Donald Trump is the one who allowed the conflict to escalate as it did. He's giving a non-answer, so there's that room for speculation, so there's a deniability that exists.
The one and only Jewish state must make the decisions that are important for the survival of my country, and he will do what is best for America. That is a relationship of mutual respect and mutual confidence.
I mean, there's so much going on there, Dave. There is regime change. There is the flattery and the lies, potentially, about this some so-called Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. And then finally there is the, really buttering it up, but calling Trump to join him in this war on regime change. Just broadly, we want to give you the floor, both to react to that and to the entire situation here.
Yeah, well, it's just you're allowed to throw as many lies at the wall as you want to when you're selling a war. So there's a lot there to kind of unpack. Number one, I would just say, first off, the accusation that Iran was trying to assassinate Donald Trump just doesn't meet the most basic of smell tests. I mean, so you're telling me that the Iranian regime essentially declared war on the United States of America already, tried to murder the sitting president, and yet his response was to try to negotiate with them for a couple months until finally we had Israel attack them. Does that make sense to anybody? They tried to murder Donald Trump and then he entered negotiations with that. Come on, this is too ridiculous. And you could go back. The thing about Saddam Hussein that a lot of people kind of forget in history is that it is true that at one point Saddam Hussein did have what you could call weapons of mass destruction. He used chemical weapons in his 1980 through 1986 war with Iran and was supported by the United States of America while he did it. He then got rid of those weapons programs, and the neocons and Benjamin Netanyahu himself, you can read in his writing in the 90s when he was telling us that Iran was a few years away from a nuclear weapon all the way back then. But he was also saying that they wanted to overthrow Saddam Hussein for other reasons, for their clean break strategy. You can read about this in the Project for a New American Century, in the Clean Break memo written by Richard Pearl and David Wormser. They talked about this over and over and over again. And then after 9/11, they said the issue here is weapons of mass destruction. But that was, they always wanted the regime change. And so it's the same thing again. The goal here has been regime change in Iran. He's been open about this. He even admitted it a little bit there. But let's just take them. Look, let's just really assess the situation where we are right now. Let's take them by their own logic. If, as all the hawks are bragging right now, or saying that essentially Israel was already at war with Iran because Iran attacked first on October 7th. They're
Yeah, there's a lot of claims, and I feel like for the most part, there's a general consensus that Iran has backed a lot of entities that exist that have, not only did what they did on October 7th in terms of backing Hamas, but there's claims that they back Hezbollah. There's also claims that they back the Yemen Houthi rebels as well. So there's a lot of claims when it comes to Iran is that they back a lot of potential quote-unquote terrorist organizations, right? So there might be cause for engaging in conflict, especially if you want to get rid of the grander plot, right? When I'm listening to this, and I don't know when they get into the Donald Trump thing, I want to give Dave Smith the benefit of the doubt that I don't think he has evil ulterior motives, hopefully not, where he's potentially favoring Iran. I don't know. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think there's something to the idea that America should not engage in foreign conflicts for shallow reasons. Best way for me to put that one, right? That's what that will cause is obviously some people to get richer, because although I don't typically think of the idea of a grand conspiracy of a military industrial complex that exists where every conflict is purely for monetary gain. I will say that conflict can cause a military gain or a monetary gain. So in this situation, I think it's worthwhile for some people to actually have that mindset that this is a dumb reason they engage in this conflict. We should be more willing to negotiate in peace. And also, we really got to look at the people who is gaining monetarily from this circumstance, where they are, what power they have. Now, I do also think there's a legitimate conversation on some of these international entities having laws and customs that is completely antagonistic to the freedoms that we attribute by. Like, some women are treated like garbage in certain countries, but conversation for a different day.
They are proxies attacked. And what does that mean? It's like when they say Iran is the #1 sponsor of terror. Do they ever have to back that up with data? Do they ever, have you ever heard one war hawk who makes the claim that Iran is the #1 sponsor of terror ever, show you, look, this is how much terrorists have gotten support from Saudi, and this is how much more they've gotten from Iran? No, they never even feel the need to make this argument. Compare how much money the U.S. has given to terrorist organizations, or Israel has given to terrorist organizations, or Israel has facilitated other countries give it. Like there's no objective standard here. But if essentially the standard is because Iran has given Hamas some weapons in the past, therefore they're a proxy, and therefore when they attack Israel on October 7th, Iran has attacked Israel. Well then, what is Israel attacking Iran? Other than the U.S. attacking Iran,
Yes.
right? If that's not, and come on, and look, this is
proxy state.
Yeah, and
yes.
same with Ukraine and Russia. It's the same line of argumentation.
So but this one is so much more devastating, because it's not just that we give Israel the weapons and the money and the intelligence, but at the very least here, we had we had evacuation orders 24 to 48 hours before the attack came. Donald Trump is speaking out of both sides of his mouth. Netanyahu here is clearly saying that Donald Trump knew this attack.
I do think that is a very interesting point. Although I do not abide by the idea where you're giving leeway and leniency to Iran and then you're condemning Israel and the United States. I do not abide by that idea. I do think there is a certain level of consistency that should be attributed here in the conversation. the fact that if we're claiming that Iran uses certain organizations as proxies, then at this point, it's hard to say considering how much, how deep the relationship is between Israel and the United States and how much they benefit from our funding and our information and our intel. There's no way you can make the claim that Israel is not benefiting from the United States, and therefore the United States is also not a part of the attack that just happened. You can't have your cake and eat it too. I do think that is a legitimate conversation to be had, especially when it comes to a conflict like this, because Iran is not going to look at the United States and go like, oh yeah, you're not involved, especially with a lot of Donald Trump's recent claims he's been making on social media. I don't know if you guys have been following him, but he threatened the leader of Iran. He told the people of the capital city to evacuate immediately. He's been saying some very threatening stuff to this country. So I do think it's a worthwhile conversation. And it's always funny when you think about it, that Donald Trump is the same person that accused Obama of engaging in conflict with Iran as a means for political power. And then he's doing the same exact thing. Something to think about.
Was coming. So imagine they had that on Iran with October 7th. They don't have anything close to that. So make no mistake about it, we are at war with Iran right now. The United States of America is. Donald Trump has betrayed MAGA, betrayed America first. He has made the most disastrous decision to lead America into another war. Now, if they want to say that, look, there is an argument here, I suppose, that perhaps Iran is a better candidate for a regime change than Iraq or Libya was. This is the argument they're going to make. It seems a much more compelling argument that we're staring at yet another disaster. And as you were pointing out, Crystal, you know, I heard a little bit of your segment as I was waiting here. Yeah. As you were pointing out, which I think is really the most important point, is that this is the celebrating. It's just like unbelievable. It's 24 hours into it. They're all celebrating how easy this was. Look, I remember I was a little kid at the time, but I do vividly remember the celebrations after the Gulf War in 1991. And they were like, look how easy that was. And we didn't take any losses. We went on to be bogged down in that country for 30 years following that war. We all remember the mission accomplishment. We all remember Hillary Clinton saying, we came, we saw, he's dead. A few years later, when she was running for president, she wouldn't dare bring up Libya because it was so obviously a colossal failure. So the people celebrating this right now are just, they've lost their minds. I mean, people get swept up in war fever.
The flashbacks, the WMD talk, the like celebratory mission accomplished vibe, in that clip with Bibi, and I've heard so.
I guess my question to you guys is, war is such a complicated concept for people in the West particularly, because we've lived in eras of peace for so long at this point. We are privileged. I am thankful that I don't have to deal with conflict so often. Or at all, actually, right? Obviously, we're living in a pretty tumultuous period because of the MAGA administration. But ultimately, we've had peace. We've been able to live, go to school, have fun, play games. Technology is advanced, so we're playing video games, playing sports, just enjoying life. War is a hard concept because it requires so many aspects that is unimaginable in terms of dealing with people's lives, dealing with egos and potentially nefarious people, dealing with a cost reward system that plays into the larger politics of international power. These are such hard concepts to ground for an average person. And honestly, you shouldn't have to. That's why we have a country. That's why we have a government in the first place. So I guess my question to you is, like, when you think about all these conflicts that take into account, that take place, I prefer the idealism of that nobody has these type of potential nefarious motives. Well, we've seen throughout human history that that is not the case. I do think it's fair to criticize America when they go too far, but I always hesitate to look at America as enemy number one, especially considering all the privilege we gain from everything that has happened. But also, it's hard to tell the exact information we're fighting against. I have never done studying regarding the Libya conflict. Obviously, some of the prime ones that a lot of people unilaterally agree is bad is like the Vietnam War, right? And as of right now, it seems like a lot of people are agreeing that the Iraqi war is also bad. But I wonder, if I ask these people who are anti-war the question of, what do you think about the people in these Middle Eastern countries where women and children are treated like second-class citizens and they have no rights, no freedoms, no privileges? Do we just dismiss them? Do we let them go? Do we just allow them to suffer because we live in privilege? I'm not really battling Dave Smith here, nor am I dismissing his point. I'm more so asking a existential question to really open up the mindset of what conflict is. But all of this is tangential to the situation at hand. I don't think this really applies to the current circumstance because of the hypocrisy of the MAGA administration, the escalation of Israel ever since the ceasefire, which seems unhinged, and the unnecessary rhetoric and negotiations from MAGA with Iran. I don't think any of the questions I've asked is really applying to this situation, but I'm just curious on people's response.
So many others say this, they're yearning for freedom. I mean, it's just like, it makes me feel like, has everybody just erased their memories of what happened here? Yeah. It's utterly insane to me. And to your point about our involvement, let's put this next piece up on the screen. We now know that at least the recent discussions about, diplomatic negotiations and, hey, we're going forward with these talks this weekend was.
He did say he was against this move, but the insane part is just recently he's threatened this man on social media. It's crazy we're having these type of conversations on social media, by the way. Jesus Christ.
It's a ruse to provide cover and the element of surprise for the Israelis. So now you have this report. A U.S. official confirmed to me over the weekend Israel had an operational window to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei, but President Trump made it clear he is against such a move. This was first reported by Steve Holland. There is no reason for anyone, us, the Iranians, anyone, to believe these reports. I mean, it does also remind me of, during the Biden, oh, they're very upset with Netanyahu, leaking to always Barack Ravi. They're very upset with him, et cetera, et cetera. Why would anyone ever believe a word that comes from Trump or Steve Witkoff or anyone else associated with this administration after they've gloated about the fact that they were using diplomatic negotiations as a tool to effectuate, to help kick off this war? I mean, I'm seeing this. I'm curious your thoughts about this, Dave. I've seen this analysis that Trump was persuaded, this might be true, was persuaded by Bibi that he would have a better hand going into negotiations with Iran if he let Israel start this war and participated, as we've indicated, in starting this war. That is the most idiotic, insane possible analysis I can imagine. I guess it's possible that he really is that absolutely idiotic. But, what do you make of that? Is that really what happened here? And what do you make of this report that supposedly, oh, he was the cooler head and said you can't take out the supreme leader?
Yeah, well, I'd say Trump might be that idiotic. And, he has, again, we're kind of speculating here, but he has bragged in the past several times about how he's so smart for keeping these hawks around, because then that puts all these pressure on people to come to the negotiating table.
That's why he said he had John Bolton.
Yeah. Yeah, his example was John Bolton, who killed the deal with North Korea. Like, that was his example of it being like such a stunning success or something like that. It reminds me of like when people brag about the Abraham Accords and what a success they were, and you're like, oh yeah, they worked out so great. They led to this. Like, how, I don't even understand how you could, it'd be one thing if peace swept the Middle East after the Abraham Accords, and you go, oh, okay, maybe they played a role, but it's just
so interesting the behavior change from Dave Smith in this circumstance. We've been saying this for so long. We've been spouting this so loudly. I just appreciate that we're finally at this point. Like, I want to be honest. I'm not a Democrat. I don't mind a Republican president. I don't want MAGA presidents. They're not Republican. They don't care about the country, and they have their own ulterior motives. I've looked into it. MAGA, J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, Stephen Miller, Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, Donald Trump. A lot of these guys, they don't care about the country. They care about power.
A nightmare all across the worst fighting that we've had there in 20 years. And so since our last disastrous invasions. But so, you know, look, I mean, it seems to me like there's a couple possibilities here. None of them are good. One of the possibility is that, which I think is plausibly the case, that Israel betrayed Donald Trump, and then this is just his best way to deal with it. Like, essentially, Donald Trump was trying to negotiate, and then Israel just went ahead and launched the attack anyway. And then as a response to that, Donald Trump would rather look strong and go, no, 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 I was in on it. It was our plan all along. Or the other possibility, which I think is more likely, is that he was never negotiating in good faith and it was a distraction and Donald Trump was in on it. Either way, we're at the same place.
Yeah.
You know, either way, even if Donald Trump was betrayed by the Israelis and then just took their side in public, which has happened with different presidencies over the years. It's certainly happened with Bill Clinton after Camp David. So maybe that's the case. But then either way, then you're just so weak and pathetic that even after the Israelis betray you, you'll still come out and catch their back and support them in this war. Well, that's just as bad from the Iranian perspective and from any reasonable person's perspective. Yeah. So, you know, we don't know. We'll probably find out more about this over time. But either way, in effect, it's the same thing. You know, and then we're left in the position where you're supposed to sit here and justify a sneak aggressive preemptive attack. Like, somehow you're supposed to feel like you're the good guys in an absolute war of choice against a country that it does not have nuclear weapons. Let's get real here. The only country in the Middle East who secretly has nuclear weapons is Israel. Yes. Iran is a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel is not, and they have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and
it's
they're
just unbelievable.
a rogue nation attacking six of their neighbors as we speak, and are not part of the non-proliferation. I mean,
we actually have
cool with that.
We have a non-compliant nuclear member of the NPT actually attacking a member of the NPT who is far more in compliance with said international treaty. Hey, whatever. What do I know, right? You know, what's even crazier to me, Dave, is just like the lead up to the war in Iraq, we already have our Ahmed Talibi. I actually can't believe it, or our 1953 Operation Ajax. Let's go and put B4, please, up on the screen. We actually have members of the Israeli government who are tweeting out pictures of the son of the Shah of Iran, you know, basically insinuating that they are going to re-implement the monarchy on the people of Iran. It's like 1953 all over again, and or just like this, you know, fascination with these Western figures who have lived here, what, for their entire lives almost at this point. We're like, oh, actually, these guys, because we're buddies and they agree with us, the people of Iran will totally take to that, and we're going to implement this new regime. They're not even being subtle about it. Like I said, these are literally members of the Israeli government who are teasing basically the restoration of the monarchy in Iran by force. It's like 2003 all over again, where we have this buddy here, like you said, with the neocons in Washington, and then this theory that we can just go in, blow out the regime, and then we're going to implement this new style of government. I mean, this is as naked as it gets, in my opinion, on all of this. And I want you to just, you know, go through, perhaps because you're so well read on the history of these, you know, these attempts by the United States and others to install these types of figures. And it never, ever works out. When will we ever back the right horse in the Middle East?
Yeah. And of course...
It's an interesting conversation. When will we ever get it right in terms of Middle East leadership? Hmm.
Look, installing the Shah to begin with in 1953 is a huge
point.
part of the reason why we have the current government in Iran that we have, which is a horrible, repressive government that does not give their people liberty, and we should all, oppose that. But the thing is that war is so much worse. It's like Saddam Hussein.
Let me think about that. I'm just dissecting different type conversations. I'm all good for criticizing Donald Trump, and right now Israel is being unhinged, so I'm all for criticizing them as well. If you lived in a oppressive government, again, this is a question. This is not a battle against Dave Smith, but if you lived in a oppressive government where you are treated like garbage, treated like a second or third class citizen, what would be worse? Living in that lifestyle as is, or engaging in potential war where the system that you are in can potentially collapse? If I'm the people, if I'm a person in that system, I don't know if war is worse for those people in particular. It's worse for us Americans, 100%, for sure, 1,000%. Worse for Americans, but I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Hussein was a brutal, oppressive dictator also, but the worst thing that ever happened to the people of Iraq was George W. Bush invading the country. And, the only examples that people look to, which are, rather remarkable examples of regime change, are Germany and Japan, and how they were brought back into the, liberal international order after World War II. But what was required in order to get to that point was a clear war on the civilian population with, millions of casualties. And
war on the civilian population. Japan for sure. Germany, was that a war on the civilian population? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. I don't know if that's how I would qualify that. I think it was, but I think I understand what he's trying to say. It's tough. Like, these conversations are so important. You always have to measure out the valuable conversations where there's an inherent purpose behind the deeper dialogue that is being discussed, and giving leeway and credence to a better purpose insinuated by an individual. And then there is the other aspect where it's like a twisted dialogue that is framing itself as morally superior, but it has ulterior motives that is detrimental to the system of freedom that you abide by. So it's always hard to distinguish, like, where does this person lie, right? Sometimes it becomes relatively obvious. I feel like at this point it is super obvious when it comes to leadership in MAGA. But then we got some individuals who chose Trump and have decided to turn on Trump and have been always wavering around this kind of right to center. And they're harder to gauge. Do they really truly have moral principles that have a standard of consistency? Those people are hard to truly gauge. But I'm gonna hear them out in good faith.
And that, like, if your argument is we should bring that to Iran, then don't tell me one word about how you care about how the people of Iran are being oppressed, because that's a far worse, level of oppression. And so,
don't know if I necessarily agree to that, but I do think that there are individuals, there are leadership, especially right now in the administration, that will try to justify their actions by seeming like there are liberators of freedom, and that is dangerous. That is dangerous.
This is, again, as you guys have touched on, this is always how they talk at the beginning of these wars. It's always that democracy will sweep the region and that the people will greet us as liberators. It'll be easy, paid for in oil, all this stuff. But, sit here and tell me about how Washington, D.C. or Tel Aviv can, reorchestrate another society, can reconstruct it from the ground and choose its leaderships. I mean, just think about the hubris involved in that. As the late, great Harry Brown used to point out when he was talking about the war on drugs in the United States of America, the U.S. federal government can't even keep drugs out of federal prisons. Washington, D.C. can't even solve the violent crime problem in Washington, D.C. But you're telling me we're going to install the new leader for the Iranians and the people will comply because what? Because the regime is so weak and the people want liberty so much? This regime has ruled since 1979 with the most powerful governments in the world opposing them, working on ousting them the entire time. And they've still stayed in power. So you could tell me a nice story. It's easy to write down a nice story. Oh yeah, I say we intervene and then we put the Shah's son back in and then everything works out fine. Okay, let's see that happen. And the other thing that
I think that is a fair point by Dave Smith in the sense that, it's a simple analogy when it comes down to do not judge someone or do not try to save everyone or something like cleaning your room with your own room unclean, something like that. You guys know what I'm talking about. There's something to be said there. I do think you can do both. I think it's an interesting point.
Add, and I don't know. I mean, maybe things have changed to some degree. I mean, certainly Israel was able to pull off that drone attack, which I don't think they would have been able to pull off in years past. But it was in 2007 that the
All right, I don't want 7 minutes left. I really just want to get to one quote in particular. Of course, you guys can watch the full thing on your own time. But let's get to where he says the infamous quote. It's funny how we're almost there. It's funny how I'll allow him to say it, and then I'll say my piece.
Negotiations are over now. The time for negotiations was before this. And so, yeah, Donald Trump looks, and man, I supported him this last year. I apologize for doing so. It was a bad calculation. At the time, it seemed like the right one. But he should be impeached and removed for this one. Wow. And not on some not on some ridiculous Nancy Pelosi. Of course, the Congress will never do it because they're all a bunch of corrupt hacks.
This is the one thing they support. This is
Donald Trump should be impeached and removed for this. All of his supporters should turn on him. It's the absolute betrayal of everything that he ran and campaigned on and everything that he stood for. And I will say, despite the fact that, Donald Trump supporters have been labeled like a cult following, and that certainly is true for a percentage of his supporters, he is going to lose his coalition over this. I know I don't just speak for myself when I say there are a lot of us who simply will not go along with this. So it's just a devastating mistake. By the way, on top of that, he's also going to lose the deportation fight because of this. Because right now he needed all the political capital he could have to turn that, you got a majority support for deportations, but the minority is very mobilized and they're out and they're protesting all around the country. He needed all of his political capital for that move. So here's what we got. The neocons win. More war abroad and, bomb the world and invite the world. No matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain.
It is funny. It's some of the smart.
So we'll end it there. But this is what I have to say. It's interesting that in two separate situations, the moment that the veil got lifted over their eyes, the moment they woke up from the Matrix, the moment they took the blue pill, and their eyes opened to the reality of what the world is, both Dave Smith and Elon Musk looked at Donald Trump objectively and said, he needs to be impeached. Don't you find that interesting? That the moment they look at Donald Trump for who he is, they said he needs to be impeached. Now Elon Musk became a coward and decided to say, oh, I take back some of the things I said. We'll see if that happens with Dave Smith. Because he's right. It's a cultish following. I don't see MAGA as a political party anymore. I see it as a cultish fan base over one man. So we'll see if Dave Smith is able to hold steady, or will he revert back to supporting this man? It's possible. Hard to tell. I appreciate the accountability. I do think that he might have his principles solely founded on the idea of anti-war. I guess we probably don't agree exactly with the immigration stuff. But shout out Dave Smith. Shout out Dave Smith. All right, well, with that said, that is all I got for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully Donald Trump does not bring us into World War III, but we will see. Y'all have a good one. Take care, and peace.